The royal hall of the Kalar Empire had stood unchanged for more than 1,000 cycles. Its towering pillars glowed with soft blue light, and the air itself hummed with ancient energy. Every system in the hall was tied to the same source, the core lattice, an old and powerful structure said to be perfect when it was first created. But perfection, over time, had begun to fail. For years, the core lattice had flickered. Energy shields weakened. Climate controls stuttered. Entire sections of the palace would dim for moments before stabilizing again. The best minds of the empire had tried to fix it, yet none dared to change its inner design. Tradition ruled them. Sacred systems were not meant to be altered. Then, on one quiet cycle, the flickering stopped. Lights brightened. The air grew steady. Even the subtle vibration beneath the floor vanished, replaced by calm stability. Across the palace, engineers froze in place, staring at their instruments in disbelief. The core lattice was working better than it had in centuries. Within moments, word reached the throne. The alien queen entered the hall with measured steps, her long cloak flowing behind her like living shadow. Her presence alone silenced every voice. Court officials, engineers, and scholars lowered themselves in respect, fear tightening their posture. Her eyes moved across the chamber, sharp and searching. The queen's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "Who fixed this?" The sound echoed against the pillars, sending a tremor through the gathered crowd. No one answered. Engineers exchanged nervous glances. Scholars shifted their weight. Several advisors began speaking at once, each denying responsibility, each blaming confusion or coincidence. The queen raised one hand. Silence returned instantly. "This system was declared untouchable," she said. "Yet it has been changed. Improved. Someone acted without permission." Her gaze hardened. "Bring them forward." Fear rippled through the hall. At the very edge of the gathering stood a human. He wore a simple gray uniform marked with maintenance symbols, his sleeves slightly rolled, his posture calm but alert. His name was Daniel Hale, and he was not important, at least, not in the eyes of the Empire. He was part of a small human exchange crew, assigned to low-level repair work. Humans were allowed to clean, inspect, and replace surface components. They were never trusted with core systems. Daniel had not stepped forward yet. He watched as the Queen's advisors searched the crowd, confusion growing on their faces. "No record exists of authorization," one official said carefully. "No technician logged an intervention." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Then the system healed itself?" she asked coldly. No one dared answer that question. Daniel took a slow breath. He knew what he had done, and he knew what would happen if he stayed silent. Still, his feet felt heavy as he stepped forward. The sound of his boots echoed far louder than they should have. Heads turned. Some aliens stiffened in disbelief. Others stared openly, their expressions mixing surprise and offense. A human had moved without being summoned. Daniel stopped several steps from the central platform and lowered his head respectfully. "I did," he said. The words were simple, quiet, but they carried across the hall. The Queen's gaze locked onto him. For a long moment, she said nothing. "You," she finally said. "Explain." Whispers erupted instantly. "A human? They lack the knowledge. He must be mistaken." "He touched the core?" Daniel lifted his head. His voice remained steady, though his heart raced. "I did not change the design," he said. "I adjusted the flow." The Queen descended one step from her throne. "Explain in words this court can understand." Daniel nodded. "The system was perfect when it was built," he said. "But perfect systems don't like change. Over time, small errors build up." The lattice was trying to correct itself, but it was too rigid. One of the scholars interrupted sharply. "The core follows absolute balance. It cannot be wrong." Daniel turned slightly toward them, respectful but firm. "It wasn't wrong," he said. "It was tired." The hall fell silent again. Daniel continued, encouraged by the absence of interruption. "Where I come from," he said, "we don't have perfect systems. Things break. They wear down. So we don't lock them in place. We give them room to move." He gestured gently. "I added a small bypass, not a replacement, just a release." Pressure had nowhere to go, so it built up. Now it flows again. The queen studied him closely. You altered sacred architecture, she said. Yes, Daniel replied honestly. But I did not harm it. One advisor stepped forward angrily. This is arrogance. A human claims to understand what our greatest minds could not. Daniel looked at them calmly. I didn't understand everything, he said. I just listened. That answer unsettled the room more than any technical explanation. The queen raised her hand again. Remove him, an advisor urged. He admits guilt. The queen did not move. Instead, she turned her gaze to the towering pillars. The steady glow. The calm air. For centuries, she said slowly, we honored a system by refusing to touch it. She looked back at Daniel. And you honored it by repairing it. Daniel remained silent. You acted without permission, the queen continued. Why? Daniel chose his words carefully. Because it was failing, he said. And because no one else was allowed to try. The queen studied him for a long time. Then she spoke words no one expected. Detain him, she said. But treat him as a guest. Gasps echoed through the hall. The queen raised her voice once more. This matter is not finished, she declared. If one human could restore what an empire feared to touch, then we must ask ourselves why. Her gaze returned to Daniel. And what else we have ignored? As guards escorted him away, not roughly, but firmly, Daniel felt the weight of countless eyes on him. Some were angry. Some were afraid. But a few were curious. Behind him, the core lattice continued to hum steadily. For the first time in generations, the empire's heart was beating strong again. Word had spread across the empire, carried by ships, signals, and quiet conversations. Engineers came first, then scholars, then officials from distant systems. Even citizens were allowed to stand at the outer edges, something that had not happened in generations. The air felt different, not tense, expectant. Daniel stood where he always did, near the side, hands folded, eyes calm. He wore the same simple uniform. He had not asked for anything more, but the empire had changed around him. The alien queen entered without ceremony. Her steps were steady. Her expression was not cold, nor angry, but clear. She took her place on the throne and waited until silence settled completely. Then she spoke. For a long time, she said, this hall echoed only with certainty. Her voice carried easily, no need for force. We believed our systems were perfect because they were ancient. We believed our traditions protected us because they were unchanging. She paused and looked across the gathered crowd. We were wrong. A ripple moved through the hall. Not outrage, but understanding. The core lattice did not fail because it was weak, she continued. It failed because it was forbidden to change. Her gaze shifted, stopping on Daniel. A human saw what we refused to see. Whispers followed, but the queen raised her hand. Not because he was wiser, she said, but because he was willing. Daniel felt his chest tighten slightly. She stood. When I demanded to know who fixed the system, she said, I expected silence, fear, or denial. Her eyes softened just a little. Instead, one human stepped forward. She turned fully toward him. Daniel Hale. Every eye followed her gaze. Step forward. Daniel did. The sound of his steps echoed. But this time, it did not feel heavy. It felt final. He stopped at the center of the hall and bowed his head. You did not ask permission, the queen said. No, Daniel replied simply. You broke tradition. Yes. You risked punishment. Yes. The queen held his gaze. Why? Daniel took a slow breath. Because systems don't care about rules, he said. They care about whether you help them survive. Silence followed. The queen nodded once. Because of your actions, she said. 12 worlds remain connected. Our core systems are stronger than they have been in centuries. She raised her voice slightly. And because of that, this empire must change. That word carried weight. From this day forward, she declared, humans will no longer be limited to observation roles. They will be invited as partners. Gasps rose from the crowd. Not rulers, she continued. Not servants. Partners. She turned toward the officials. Any who cannot accept this may step aside. None did. The queen looked back at Daniel. You will not be elevated above others, she said. You will not be placed on a pedestal. Daniel nodded. But, she continued, your voice will be heard. She reached to her side and lifted a small, glowing emblem. Not a medal. Not a weapon. A symbol of access. With this, she said, you may speak in any council, any hall, any system that needs repair. She stepped down from the throne and held it out. Daniel hesitated. Then he accepted it. I didn't do this alone, he said quietly. The Queen smiled faintly. Neither does any lasting change. The hall erupted not in shouting, but in sound. A low, unified tone of acknowledgement that vibrated through the pillars themselves. After the assembly ended, Daniel found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Lights flowed gently below, no longer flickering, no longer strained. The Queen joined him. You could have asked for more, she said. Daniel shook his head. I don't need more. She studied him. Your kind is strange, he smiled. We hear that a lot. They stood in silence for a moment. My empire once believed strength came from never bending, the Queen said. You showed us that strength comes from knowing when to. Daniel looked out over the city. Humans learned that the hard way, he said. Your world is harsh, she observed. It has to be, Daniel replied. Otherwise we wouldn't survive it. The Queen turned toward him fully. Tell me something, she said. Why do humans fix things that do not belong to them? Daniel thought for a long moment. Because broken things don't ask who owns them, he said. They just ask for help. The Queen inclined her head slightly. In the cycles that followed, change spread quietly but deeply. Alien engineers began redesigning systems with flexibility in mind. Human teams were invited to collaborate, not to command. New failures still happened, but they no longer caused panic. Because now, someone would step forward. Sometimes alien, sometimes human, always willing. Daniel returned to his work, often unnoticed, often quiet. But when systems trembled, people listened for his voice, not because he was human, but because he had taught them how to listen themselves. One day, as he walked through the hall, a young alien child looked up at him and asked a simple question. Are humans heroes? Daniel smiled and knelt slightly. No, he said. We're just fixers. The child considered that. I want to be a fixer, they said. Daniel stood and nodded. So does the future, he replied. Above them, the core lattice pulsed with calm, steady light. Not perfect, not rigid, but alive. And in the heart of a once unchanging empire, something new had taken root. Not fear, not pride, but the courage to answer when something was broken, even when only a human dared to speak. And it was a human hand that had helped it heal.